Are you looking to build influence? Or maybe to drive more traffic? But bottom line, you want to change the game. You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Business Building Book Club. We're going to give you the tools you need to succeed, both online and in person. Brought to you by Coach Molly and Three Pines Leadership. Hey, visibility hackers, and welcome back to the Business Building Book Club. I'm your host, Coach Molly from visibilityhacking.com, and it's an absolute joy to have you guys here focusing on building your businesses. This season, we are diving into Russell Brunson's Expert Secrets book. It's jam-packed with some of the best secrets in terms of marketing, influence building, community building, and ultimately online sales, because that's what fills our bank accounts. You can get your own copy absolutely free. Just cover the cost of shipping. You could find in the description box, you can find all the links, show notes. You know the deal. Yeah, I don't need to tell you by now because it's season 2. We're in the middle of season 2, and I'm so excited to bring our next guest on with us. So let's rewind little briefly, because we've taken a few weeks off because everyone needs to recharge. So the last chapter we read in the book was all about one-to-many selling. The idea that we don't have to always be interacting salesperson to individual customer for each and every sale. There are ways in which we can speak to many people and sell them at the same time. It's different. It takes a completely different mindset, framework, and strategy, but it is so amazing once you tap into this possibility. So that's what we talked about last episode. This episode, we're hanging out with one of my favorite people ever. All right, I don't introduce my guests. You introduce yourself. So who are you and why are you here?
I mean, I'm definitely one of your best friends ever. Molly, thank you so much. My name is Luis. I am one half of the Biz Bros. So Fonzie's the other half. You know, I'm normally the better looking, but he's the better sounding. So, you know, we balance each other out. Originally from Venezuela. I've been here in the States for about 10 years now, 11 years. And we went from vinyl stickers to screen printing to social media marketing agency to video production to now very specific content and modern media team. So it's been quite a journey in the last 10 years or so, and it's been fun. So now what we do is we literally build these awesome teams for companies that want to scale their content and do a lot of high volume, a lot of high value, and so on. So that's very fast what we do and then who I am. So, you know.
Well, welcome to the show.
Was that good?
That was
Thank
fabulous. You. Okay, so question, what is modern media?
Oh, that's a good question. So I know we teased it a little bit before the interview, and I'm like, man, should I say it or should I not? But here's the thing, right? Like we have this training on the publishing pyramid that we talk about the tiny timeline that holds incredible opportunity, right? And back in the day, you had these media outlets, right? The newspapers, radio, TV, and we go when we walk through kind of like how commercials and publicity and content started to flourish in these new vehicles, right? Well, guess what? Today, in our day and age, there's so many outlets, right? So much. And we're like, how can we possibly keep up, right? Well, there's a way that we can, right? And we lately, in our 45 Live challenge, we had about 100 people in there, which has been incredible, right? We've been talking a lot about how to consistently scale your content. How can you transition from a consumer to a producer, right? How can you like bring that up, and then how can we bring that to many more people? So modern media is literally those outputs that we see today. Podcasting, how many video outlets do we have? Like YouTube, Vimeo, there's so many, right? Those are just a few. How many social media channels? And then how can we apply our message to those channels so we can start talking one to many, like you said, and start selling them on us, start selling them on our company, start selling them in the products and services that we can offer to better their lives, right? So that's a very quick and fast description of what modern media means and where it comes from.
So I'm an absolute visual learner. You mentioned something about a pyramid. Please fill me in with that one.
You're gonna love this. So this term was actually born at the 9 at 9 with Catherine Jones, right? So she was like, okay, tell me more what you guys do, right? And this is a beautiful thing about publishing, because it forces you to put your thoughts into words, right? And then you're like, when you do that, there's this beautiful thing that happens, and it helps you clarify a lot of what we say, a lot of the ideas. And then we're be like, okay, do I really agree with this, right? And internally, personally, right? And like, is this something that I really believe that I can stand behind? And this is normally the first wall that we go through, right? But after that, we start receiving feedback from the people that we talk to. For example, with you, I know that pyramid, because you're visual, I'm like, okay, well, that caused some interest. That's an indicator, right? That this is resonating. This is awesome, right? Then when we when we talked about it with Catherine, right? Same reaction. She was like, oh my God, this really works. So that's the second part, the second stage of receiving that feedback and publishing. All right, so that's the preface of the publishing pyramid. What is the publishing pyramid? The publishing pyramid is our framework on how we start to be transitioning from that consumer side of things, right, to the producer side of things, and then how do you scale it? So most people, how we understand the pyramid is from top to bottom, and then how we execute it is from bottom up, right? So most people, what they see is the scaling side of the content, right? We go and we see Gary V's, the Russell Branson's, like all these people that publish many pieces of content across many modern media outlets, right? And you're like, okay, I want to go there. But what we don't recognize is that they're in a scaling phase. They have $30,000 a month teams, $40,000 a month teams, right? Freaking Gary Vee has like 3 TikTok specific editors. Clearly, somebody that is starting to produce and transitioning from consumer to producer might be really challenging to get at that point, right? So they're at that top phase. That's the scaling phase that we normally see. Right below that is capacity, right? Capacity holds the resources and the scaling phase, because we got to measure our own capacity on creation. We got to measure our own capacity on producing the content side of things, on the processes, SOPs. We got to measure our team's capacity to execute, to be the technicians on how do we edit this kind of video for this specific output, right? So that is what comes right under the scaling phase. Right under capacity, right? What rules capacity? It's consistency, right? We got to stay consistent on the creation side of things, and on the production side of things, and on the distributing side of things, right? So we got to understand what is that consistency. Normally we start with the production and the creation consistency, right? How often am I going to create? Going back to Gary Vee, right? He says document, right? So we could be creators literally every single day. We go back to our 45 Live challenge. We go every single day, we publish a video, right? So once that consistency is set up, then we can start looking again at the capacity and so on. And I will break it down from bottom up, right? But before consistency, the base, right? The very bottom is your message, right? What is your message? If we don't have a message, then we do not have the consistency, then we do not have the capacity, and so on, right? So what is our message? How do we actually get our message? This is when we start transitioning from that consumer to producer, right? How do we practice that message, right? So obviously people like Russell or Gary, that they have been in the industry for so long, they have their message clear as a Canadian lake, right? It's like, it's just perfect. But normally when we start as entrepreneurs, right, and this happened to us a few years back, where our message is all over the place. We don't really know who we serve at first, right? It might be challenging. We might be transitioning, right? So how do we find that message? And that's when we start executing from bottom up, right? And this applies to any level of production level, any level of company, right? Let's talk with maybe solopreneurs, entrepreneurs that are starting up, right? That might be a good example, because big companies can apply these principles and still do really well. But let's say for us, right? We're like, okay, how can I start sharing my message, right? What is my message actually, right? So in order to produce that, I need to remove as much friction as possible so I can execute. Right. That's why for us in our personal story was like, let's start with just going live, because the second I talk to that phone, that thing is being published. Right. So let's go with that example. And then I'll share another example with our show, for example. So perfect. Every single day. So then, because it's every single day, I've decided on my capacity, on my consistency to work on my message. So my consistency is once a day, every single day, right? Then I start measuring my capacity. What is my capacity of actually recording the video and publishing it? Like, am I being tired? Is it my mental capacity? Am I running out of topics? Do I have enough topics? Right? Those are different elements that fall inside of that capacity, right? But without consistency, I cannot measure that. So first is I gotta be consistent, right? And then after that, it's like, okay, what is my capacity on publishing and selling, so I can build the resources to then go back down and either increase consistency or increase capacity with a team, right? And then that cycle just repeats and repeats. So for example, when we launched our show, we went from Facebook Lives to our show, and our message is literally sharing interviews with amazing, incredible entrepreneurs, right? Sharing our points of view, having this level up conversation, right? Then the consistency part of it is 3 times a week. We don't do it every day. We decided on 3 times a week. That is our commitment. And then our capacity, we started executing, and we went from 1 macro video, which was a full interview, to right now we publish more than 400 pieces of content every single month, right? And that is directly tied down to sales, so we can increase their resources, so we can reinvest in our teams, we can reinvest in our processes, and continue that awesome cycle to grow and grow and grow and grow. So that is a crash course on publishing pyramid.
Mic drop. That was great.
Mic drop.
All right. So I want to know more about your show, because I clearly am a fan of everyone having their own show and a stage in which to share that message and be consistent and gather your people. So what has having a show, what has been the biggest impact and the biggest change in your business?
Everything. So like literally we would not have a business if the show didn't exist. And here's why. We have our we have a solid process called the M2M, which is how we are able to create all these pieces leveraging a macro piece of content, right? We've come along a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, CMOs that were investing a ton of time on trying to figure out, how do I create content? How can I actually leverage my time, right? At that point, our time is super valuable, right? At any point, our time is super valuable. We just don't tend to recognize that at first, right? So we had this one client that he's a CMO of 80 people company, right? Like he's out there, the $1 million, right? Like a big company, right? And this guy was investing 80 hours of his time a month on creating content. 80 hours a month, a CMO, right? That's a ton of time. And we're like, okay, he knew that content was a way to talk from one to many, right? He knew that that was a way of him providing value. And when we came in and chatted with him, his biggest pain was that he was spending too much time. He was not able to dedicate to his team, to his family, and so on. So we're like, okay, from 80 hours, let's go to 4, right? And then from those pieces, we can leverage that and then create a ton of assets that we could potentially distribute in your multimedia channels, right? And then that's attached to a strategy and so on, right? So it's like 4 hours a week, I'm sold. I'm like, no, 4 hours a month. And he's like, okay, well, so that's the first thing that we got to understand. So that was a process that was happening at the client level. But we were dealing with a lot of like one-on-ones. We were dealing with a lot of local businesses at the time. We would actually go on location and film their stuff, right? Because they didn't have the equipment. Zoom was not as popular at the time. And then we will create those assets. Now COVID happened, and all our coaches, everybody was like, you guys have to create your own show. You guys have to publish just like you publish with your clients. And at the time we were selling the time back to them with this process, right? But how do we get the voice out? How do we actually connect with more people? And when COVID happened, we lost about 80% of our business because all these local businesses closed completely. And they had no idea when they were going to be able to come back. So I freaked out massively. I was like, because I'm in charge of the numbers. So I'm like, my brother had no idea because he doesn't see those spreadsheets ever, even though I tell him to go look at them. But he's like, dude, go take a walk, right? And then when you come back, we'll chat, right? So when you come back, and he's like, let's change perspective, right? Everybody has been telling us to publish. We hear it, we preach it, right? And we were publishing not at this level, right? We were publishing our daily lives. We were engaging with a lot of people. We're creating connection like that, right? But we did not have that platform, which became our main source, right? So he goes like, let's launch the show. right? And before, we actually had like 5 episodes in the can that were recorded with 2 cameras, the lights super professional, right? It was never edited because there was so much friction to execute, right? We go back to the pyramid, right? The capacity. What was our capacity to execution? Well, on the editing side of things, that was a lot of friction. We just didn't want to do it, or we didn't have the team to do it at the time. So they were never published. So we grabbed that concept of frictionless publishing and we decided, okay, let's launch a show. The consistency is 3 times a week. And we're actually going to do it live, so we don't have to edit anything. We accept that this is the way that's going to go. You know, there's some tools that we rely on, like an amazing broadcaster that has the intros, has the sound. So anything recorded there is like almost publishing ready, right? So we're like, sweet, how can we leverage these tools, this stuff, these processes, so we can actually go and publish right away? So the first 20 episodes, they were just us getting comfortable with the camera, with the system, with the topics that we're talking about. But eventually we were like, oh, we're running out of topics. What are we going to be talking about, right? And this is because the frameworks were not developed, right? All these things were not quite ready for us to explore and deep down into our own things. This is the beautiful things that happen, like we mentioned at the very beginning, from turning your thoughts into words and putting them out, right? So what we decided to do was, okay, let's actually bring some guests and go in an interview mode and learn a ton from them and create connections and relationships, which, by the way, this is like the number one thing we preach about on the content. It's like, oh, the vehicle of connection on steroids, big time, right? And we started doing that, right? And we started bringing, first we brought our coach, you know, it's Steve Larson was our first like official guest, Pablo Gonzalez, or like amazing like partner in crime for like bigger projects. He came into Marley Jackson, and then so on. We started bringing all these amazing entrepreneurs, and what's happening is like naturally started evolving in a place where we can provide value to them. They provide value to us in our content. Our audience gains a ton. And then on the back end, I can have a conversation where like, hey, do you know of anybody that could potentially use our services? Do you know of anybody that could potentially partner with us, right? And then these conversations started to happen where we found clients, we've found strategic relationships, we found referrals, and it was incredible. And we're like, okay. And that was the sole like business catalyst that launched that second part of the agency, where it's been nonstop, and we went from like freelancing to now we have a team of 8 people, and it's just been incredible. And you know, now we're in a very grateful position to where like we are pacing our growth. Like we don't need it anymore. We're like, okay, this is exactly what we want to do, and that was not possible if we weren't not publishing. So that's the story of the show and how it started.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, first of all, how do people get to hear your amazing show? Tell them about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can look for Content is Profit in any of your favorite podcasting platforms. We should be there. And or you can find all the golden boulders that we grab from those shows, and we share all over social media. So you can connect with us at Biz Bros Co, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you are. Yeah.
Okay, golden boulders. Okay, tell me more. So if we have our big main pillar content, like this interview right now, how do I go about finding golden boulders, and then what do I do with them?
Good question. So I'm going to walk you through our process real quick, right? So macro content is recorded. That's your priority. That is your consistent piece of content that we want to leverage, right? On the back end with our relationship, at the front end with our audience, right? So like, I don't really want to create another piece of content, right? And you know, you do you 100%. I truly believe this is the way to go because it's worked for us and it helps a lot of people, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, what is a process that works for you, right? We now are putting, for example, our Fortified Live back active because it serves us to test ideas. It's kind of like this. Every single day, I got an opportunity to test a message, to test a story, to test an idea. And then that idea, if it resonates, it makes the filter to a macro content. So it's beautiful, right? So we can multiply, and I'm still present, I'm still publishing, right? But how we do this is, okay, through the interview, there's going to be some points that are going to resonate with you, that are going to be like, oh my gosh, that was so good. Oh my gosh, that's going to help my audience so much, right? So there's been points in this conversation where your eyes go wide, right? It's like, publishing pyramid, tell me more. Hey, the show, oh my gosh, tell me more, right? And those are indicators, right? So how do we find these indicators? As we're doing this, I highly, highly, highly recommend to have a notepad next to you and be like, okay, you know, publishing pyramid, minute 20, right? That is exactly, I see your pen right there. So that is something that we forget, right? And it comes with practice, right? Like, for example, we co-host a show. My brother is also on the show. So what we do is as we interviewing that person, we're also taking notes on different comments, different hooks, right? And this comes with practice, right? With execution. Remember, remove the friction at first to execute, then we can do that. If you cannot do it live, just go revisit the show later and be like, that resonated, that was important. And then you can have like kind of like a tentative timeline of events, right? So let's say from this 1 hour interview, you found 5 awesome ideas that you're like, oh my gosh, these are so good. Sweet. So those are your golden boulders of the episode. And then you're like, okay, the next step is, where am I actually publishing? What is my top priority distribution channel, right? What those can become really small podcast episodes as well. You don't have to have a 1 hour episode, right? There's, for example, Andy Frisella, he records his show on his phone. Frank Kern records his show on his like watch, right? And then he talks for like 10 minutes and then that's what he shares, right? So remove the friction, right? We chose to distribute a ton of content because we are very visual. We test, we just experiment. Our vision with our content is like, what if we try that? What if we do that? Well, guess what? We're still attracting a ton of people and we're having a blast because we are like free of shackles of like how content should look, because we're like, what if we try this? Because the system that we have allows for that, right? So, but anyway, so once you have those ideas, you're like, okay, well, where are my top priority platforms where I'm publishing this, right? Is it another podcast episode? Is it a mini YouTube video, right? Is it a Facebook post? And then from there, you can start adapting those pieces to those outlets and then create your SOPs and then you scale, right? So that's step number 1. That is like, if you want to do it yourself, that's a great. If you don't want to do it yourself, but you still find value on it, you can just give us a call. That's exactly what we do. We create these modern media teams for you, where in 2 weeks you're rock and rolling with however output you want. Like literally, we have not found a limit yet, because it depends on distribution. We don't distribute for people, but we train them to do so. So thank you for allowing me to put in the plug in there. But yeah, that's our secret sauce.
Okay, so I'm scaling my business. I have VAs on my team. So can I hire you guys to help me take my macro content and make it work, but you guys help me train my VA so that my team can still take control over our content?
Absolutely. So yes. So this is the fun part, right? Like a lot of people come to us like, I don't really want to select the golden boulders, right? Like if you do, awesome, great. Like that is great. But we have a process called value index, which is where we process that video and we start filtering by ideas, right? Not maybe like how you look, but let's say, Molly, we talk about visibility a ton, right? You have these amazing pillars, right? That you continue to hit every single day, right? Well, in our onboarding meeting, we will go over those pillars, like what are they, right? And if they're not solid, that's fine. We will discover them through publishing your message. You're going to start repeating things and we're going to start finding those patterns. And then from there, you're going to be like, okay, Luis, I really want to focus on the visibility side of things and the mindset side of things. So our teams of marketers are going to come and those are the golden boulders that they're going to steal from the content. It's not going to be like a random story. It has to be related to your goal on educating, providing value, like teaching your audience, right? Because if not, what are we doing, right? So that's what we do. We distill that process so you don't have to provide any timestamps, right? We agreed on a map, on a macro map. Okay, what is my like full content going to look like on a weekly basis? What is the output? Are we publishing? Like, how are we actually publishing? Once that's delivered to you, we bring on the VAs, we bring on the team, and we're like, this is how step 1 to step whatever, this is how we distribute. And then we test, we go back, we revisit the process, and then we continue to execute. So I'll give you an example. We have this company, they publish about 55 pieces every single week, right? It hasn't changed in about like 9 months. And they distribute that in 20 minutes a week. So here's where we crush all. And I know my camera. Can you see me? Here we go. I'm off focus. There we go. It's driving me crazy. But here's the fun part. It's when we talk high volume, a lot of people like freak out because they're like, they relate back to what they do on a daily basis to publish, and it does take time and it does take a lot of energy, right? So we've built the processes which, one is called a batch board that allows us to write those captions really, really quick, right? To make sure that we're targeting the same thing, and we teach that to the teams. Again, we teach how to do that, and then your voice or your team's voice, they know you better than we do, right? Eventually we'll probably know you a lot better too, but then they can use these tools to distribute that high volume in little time with little friction, and then receive feedback on the back end on what's working, what is the messaging that's resonating, right? And then we go back and we implement that on the macro, and then it's this amazing content flywheel that starts to happen. And it's so fun because then you're creating all the time, and you do what you love.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. So clearly we've sold everyone on the idea that once you step into a frictionless process, creating a ton of content, being hyper visible, being in more places than one at the same time is easy. So now we have to sell people on the idea that getting their message in front of people in the first place is a worthy endeavor. So what do you say to people who are sitting there listening and going, well, Russell's books are great, and I love the idea of funnels and love the idea of publishing, but it's just not quite for me. What do you say to those people?
Well, to go experiment. Well, first thing is like go experiment. That's a conversation that I made peace with a long time ago. I'm like, look, if I need to convince you on publishing, you're probably not my person, right? Like, and that's okay, right? But at the same time, let's say we jump in and they're like, they really want it, but they're like, still like having questions, and we're like, okay, this is the thing that you need to do, right? You need to publish. And we've heard, Gary Vee, for example, for a long time, he was like, hey, your company is two companies. Is a company that provides the solutions, right? And is a media company, right? It's like, if you do not have visibility, if you do not have attention, you're going to die. Like, that's it. As simple as that. You're not going to have conversations. You're not going to be able to help more people. You're not going to be able to X, Y, Z. Right. So that's the first thing. So we got to be at peace with the idea that we got to publish at some point. The second part is like, okay, we go back to the publishing pyramid, right? Like, what are my resources? Where is my capacity? What is my consistency? What is my message? So normally somebody that's starting, maybe resources are not that high, right? My capacity is like very limited because I'm also doing, I'm executing on my business. Maybe building SOPs, starting to delegate different things, right? And then my consistency, you got to decide what that is. Once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, right? So decide what that is, and then start practicing your message. What are the problems and solutions that you have for your people, right? What are the stories that I can attach to that? And here's a beautiful thing, and is what you probably wanted me to go with this. How do we connect that content with the profits? Right? How do we connect it? And here's content's profit. So sweet. It has to have a connection, right? Well, first I got to make an offer every single time that I'm out there with my message, right? I have to send people to the next step. What is that next step? So let's go super basic. Fortified Live. I want to go and do my Facebook Live. I share a story. I attach a lesson to that story that I want to teach around content. So let's say I talk about publishing pyramid. I'll tell the story on how it was created. And then I'm like, hey, if you want to find out more, or if you want the guide of the workbook that you can go through like on your own time, go here. That's how I connect it to my sales process, right? Because then they go there, and then they can potentially join a webinar. They can potentially join a phone call. There's different options that we have on the back end that we could potentially establish a conversation with that person and see if what we offer is a good fit for them. So that's the question. It's like, how do I multiply my points of contact so I can increase my chances to have more conversations and find the right people for me? So content is a vehicle, but now we got to start looking at, okay, your message, your consistency, your capacity, and then your resources. And as your resources increase, then you can feed back into the machine and build your processes and build your team and so on. Or, come to Molly and, she'll freaking kill it for you on visibility, and you can come with us and we'll freaking kill it with, content momentum.
Oh, I love it. Like, I love this idea that people can come through. They can go through Live Academy. They can figure out how to build their shows. They can have these incredible frictionless, as you say, live shows, these big macro pieces of content. And then they call up the Biz Bros and they're like, hey guys, I have this awesome show. Now I need to make smaller pieces of content. I need to spread it out there so more people can see it. And what's great is we can do this for you, my friends. We can. We have that
Yeah.
possibility.
And can I add can I add a little bit more to this? So
Absolutely.
here's the big mental hurdle that a lot of people might have, because we had it, right? And it's like, oh my God, I don't want to exhaust my audience. I don't want to like it freaks me out that I'm gonna be present 7 times a day. What happens if they unfollow? Well, if they don't unfollow, they're not your right person to be communicating with, right? Like that's great. It's just like email, right? Like if they unsubscribe, totally fine. It doesn't resonate. So learning experience, we go like why it didn't resonate, right? But guess what? Social media works a little bit different, right? Like the algorithm is gonna take care of that immediately. It's gonna start showing your content to the people that know. And at first, that audience might be minimum, but it's like, okay, if somebody follows you, again, it's not about the pieces of content. Yes, they will create that visibility every single day, multiple times a day. But if somebody starts following you, it's about that connection that we can make with them. Send them a voice note. Hey, Molly, thank you so much for joining me in my Instagram profile. I love it. What do you like about it? Like what resonated with you? I would love to have a conversation, right? Oh my gosh, so fun, because then that follower is gonna feel loved, which they are, and they're gonna give you immediate feedback on what resonated with them. Well, guess what? We talked about indicators. Those are the indicators that then you can go back and be like, okay, out of 100 followers that I got this month, 20 said that they love the publishing pyramid. I should be talking more about the publishing pyramid. Here we go. What are the stories that go there? Where are my clients that are having successes? And then it starts to feed. So anything is a win. And thank God for smaller audiences, because that would be so hard if you explode. And here's another thing. We had a Holy Homer, incredible person. Like she runs one of the top kids blogs in America, 10 million views every month, right? And she goes, I publish 75 times a day on just Facebook. And we're like, what? And yeah, and she was like, we have a process. I'm driven by data. So the more we publish, the more we help, right? The more it works, the more we grow, because we're helping people, right? We got to be convinced. Are we really convinced of what we do is actually helping people? So if we are convinced that our message is helping so many, why then should I stop my visibility? I should just like boost it as much as possible, because I am committed to my success and to their success. So we need to share that message as many times as possible. And that was my pet talk for today.
Thank you
I
for
get
coming
super
for the TED Talk.
I get super emotional with this. Like I love it. We're so passionate.
Oh, I love it. And I know that a great place for people to find that passion and push that forward, we've sprinkled the seeds a couple times in this episode, is that amazing 45 Live. And I know I totally signed up for the challenge and I'm totally watching the messages in the group, but I got completely derailed. So a little bit of a personal question. Are you doing it again?
We are. So there's gonna be a little transition, right? So here's the plan. For those who have been following us, this is the clear example of that your message works, right? And it's not that we have thousands of followers, right? We have a few that are really loyal and they really sync with our energy, and we've been able to establish amazing connections and amazing relationships, right? So Molly, thank you, because you're one of them, right? But here's the deal. The Fortified Life story resonates a lot with the audience because the people that we talk to are starting to publish, right? On the back end, different client, right? Different person that we serve with a service, right? We could potentially serve that person that's starting up with content, but there's going to be some friction in there and some learning curves and so on, right? But 45 Live was when we actually started publishing without any friction. So after 2 seasons, which we call them seasons, well, we did it internally for us to practice our message and figure out what it was, right? Then we started the show, and then it was almost a full year between season 2 and season 3, right? And one of our team members was like, hey, I've been inspired. I'm actually going to start my own 45 Live on my own, and I'm going to tackle it. I'm going to work out, and I'm going to publish about my workout. That's what he did, right? And we're like, oh my God, this is so awesome. All right, we're going to jump on that bandwagon again, and we're going to do season 3 with you, man. Right? So that was me and my brother on the call. And then we had this week that we had a ton of interviews, and we're like, let's test this out. So we started testing the story again, right? And people were resonating with it. And they were like, I want to join. Is that a thing? And it's like, I want to join. And we're like, okay, send me a message, right? So we started like grabbing this list of people, and we launched the challenge with 100 people in it. And Molly, I thank you, because you're one of those, and it's incredible. And it was no ads, no nothing. And imagine yourself in a room in front of 100 people, that is insanely valuable, right? And it's people that are paying attention, that want to listen about what we have to say. And we're like, okay, so what we did is we literally launched as ugly as possible. We're like, we need to get this going. A lot of people are giving us a lot of compliments on how the process has been, the membership side, everything in there. But it was like, we need to execute and we need to give our 100% to do this. So here's what happened. The feedback was amazing, but we are believers that if you pay attention. So here's the thing, because it was a free challenge, there was a few people, right, that kind of dropped on the consistency. And there's a lot of people that have picked back up again, but the engagement on producing the videos has been incredible. About 50% every single day, almost for 45 days. We're on day 33, I believe, today, which is mind blowing to me, right? Which says a lot. So here's the next step that we're going to do. We're going to do 2 programs of 45 lives. So the program is always going to be available in our Facebook group. So if you're interested, you can go now to go45.live, and that's our Facebook group. People can join, and it's all about publishing, right? And it's going to be there kind of like a PDF. Here's your own 45 live, right? Go tackle it. So if people have questions, they can come to the group and we'll be there answering any questions, right? But then the second plan is like, we want to do a little bit of a cohort, higher ticket, so people actually stay and pay attention, right? We're like, this is reinvestment. We're prepping the whole behind. We don't know a date on when that's happening, but that's going to be full attention with me and Fonzie. We're going to dive in every week, different trainings that we've done. But if you are today, like you, Molly, right, just go to your membership site. All the stuff is there. And that you have lifetime access to that. So you can always restart your Fortified Live. We're probably going to do the same thing. We're probably going to take like a couple of weeks break and then redo it again personally and see what's up. So hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely.
Yes, again, twice.
Yay. All right. So before we wrap it up, any last words for our listeners at home?
Oh man. If you have any questions, let me know on social media. We are the ones who answer it. So go to @Biz Bros Co. Happy to answer any comments or questions. If you want to hang out, you can come to the group. Go publish. Like you're gonna see, you're gonna become more visible, right? You're gonna be able to find what really moves you, what really moves the people that you serve. It's a fun process, and once you start tackling that way, then every other decision that you can make on the back end for the sales process is going to become so much easier, right? Whether that's a webinar, whether that's a one-on-one sales call, like it's going to be so much easier because the person that you're going to be talking to is the person that really you want to chat with and collaborate with and help and serve. So yeah, go publish. Try a Facebook Live today.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. It's been awesome.
Yes. Thank you, Molly. It was a great pleasure. Love it.
And for those of you listening at home, make sure you smash that like button or give us some 5-star rating or review it or share it with a friend. But long story short, I want you to keep coming back because next episode, we're diving back into Russell Brunson's expert secrets. We're going to be talking about webinars, which is awesome. So before we get into webinars, I wanted you guys to feel and understand how no matter how big or small your audience is, when you start publishing, when you start playing the visibility game, everything is going to change for your business. So thank you guys for joining me. I'm Molly from visibilityhacking.com, and I'll see you in our next episode. Bye.